If you want to use condensed formations like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, then you need to watch the rest of this video. Most defenses now, when they're on their day one installs, they don't install it versus the I formation anymore. They're installing it versus doubles open or 2x2 spread 4 wide receivers because that's what they consider easy now. So when everyone else is zigging, we need to zag and make defenses defend condensed space. They want to defend 53 1/3 yards because they have to do it 8 weeks out of 10. We need to at least have in the package some condensed formations to force the defense to stay gap sound and give them another thing to practice. So we're going to talk all things condensed formations here and how to line up in them. So we're starting with pairs, and what I consider a pair is a tight end and a wing. So we get the best example of this in the West formation. We're going to get a tight end and a wing with the F. Now in this formation, you'd probably want the F to be more of a fullback presence, and I really love this formation because you're forcing the defense to play 9-on-9 at the very least because you've got 2 detached wide receivers, but also you have an overload. You have a 4-man surface to the strong side, so your defense can't just stay comfortable in their base. They have to overload. And then when they overload, does that take away something from one of the wide receivers? Does it open up something there? Now, in addition to the 4-man surface, it's also a 3-by-1 formation where our 3 strong side receivers are vertical threats, meaning that nobody is tucked in behind the line of scrimmage. So this is, in my opinion, one of the hardest formations to defend in football. Now, another way that we can get to it is to tag it with a slot formation. So we bring the Z over to the weak side slot, and this is a really good formation in the gun from RPOs. If we can force the defense to play 3-over-2, and then we have hats for everybody else in the run game on the strong side, we can RPO this apex defender that normally I'm not a fan of RPOing, but we can because we've got enough numbers to block everybody except the corner on the strong side if they're playing 3-over-2. So I really like this formation, and maybe if your X is the guy, then you want to use the zoom tag instead of slot. Zoom is going to bring your Z to the weak side number 1, and X is going to be your weak side number 2. So maybe if we're running some kind of maybe 18 zap here where we've got our 4-man surface and we're running wide zone with a 4-man surface, then we can run a lion concept backside or double slants, and then our X is going to be the read on the RPO. Another way we can get to a tight end wing pair is to run a formation with a closer tag. And closer is going to bring the Z in to be that wing position. So this is one way to get to it from 2 back. We're in the I formation right here. And if we want to get a tight end wing pair on both sides, we can use the classy tag. So solo is the formation for us to say that the F is going to be the weak side tight end. He's attached. Classy is going to bring the Z in that closer formation, and it's also telling the X to be in a nasty position, which is a tight split for him. So if we bring the Z in to be the wing and then the X into a nasty split and the F is on as a tight end, then this turns into a double wing formation, all within the language and the verbiage of the Shanahan-McVay offense. So moving on to stacks. Stacks are 2 detached eligibles that are close together. The first stack formation that I want to mention is actually the South formation. Now, if you want to know more about how formations in the Shanahan-McVay offense work and how they all make sense together, be sure to check out my CoachTube course. But we're talking about South here, and South is going to bring the F and the X into a weak side stack. Notice that they are offset. Okay, the F is not directly behind the X, and I really like it this way. I think it makes it a little harder to defend. I think it really forces you to play at the very least 2-over-2 without pressing. Say we've got a corner pressing the X right here, then if you're thinking you're going to be man on the F, it'd be way too easy to just run the F underneath the X here. You know, if they're directly stacked, then the corner can press the X, and then the safety can just take the F whichever way he goes and they're man on. But when they're offset like this, I think it provides for a lot more switch releases, and you at least have to play 2-over-2 and play it more zone integrity. So if we want to add a stack to the strong side, we can do that with the click variation. So we have south over here telling the X and the F to be in a weak side stack, and click is going to tell our Z and Y to be in a strong side stack where the Z is on and the Y is off and outside. Another thing to notice about these stacks is that they are a little bit tighter to the formation. Now, they're not just 5 yards apart, but we're also not on the boundary either. It's very popular these days to take a stack and move it all the way out wide, but I really like how defenses play it when they're tight like this. Again, you have to play kind of a 3-over-2 concept because you've got to have somebody defending outside. If both receivers are, past the numbers in high school, you can't run outside anymore because the sideline's there. So somebody, at least one person's coming back in. But when we're both stacked, we're offset, and we're not all the way outside, somebody can go out, somebody can go in, both can go vertical, we can switch release. There are so many options, I think, that it really makes defenses want to have that extra player over them, which can really open doors in the run game. So another way we can get to a stack is to actually use the stack formation, and the difference between stack and south is our F and our X have switched. So in stack, our F is going to be on and inside, and X is going to be off and outside. We also have our click variation here where we still have our strong side stack between our Z and our Y. Now there are a couple variations where we can get our Z stacked with the X on the weak side, and a really good formation for this is far, which tells the F to be the number 1 to the strong side. Traditionally, this is a trips formation where we've got the Z as the slot receiver on the strong side, but we have the hug variation here. And what hug does is it tells the Z and the X to create a weak side stack where the Z is on and inside and the X is off and outside. We could also run far right Zen here, and Zen is going to switch the X and the Z in their stack. So the Z is going to be off and outside, the X is going to be on and inside. So looking now at some snug formations, and when I think about a snug formation, I'm thinking of 2x2 condensed. We've got 2 condensed eligibles to both sides, but the difference between the snug and our double wing formation is that the slots are going to be off, and our wide receivers that are condensed, the number 1 to each side is the player who's going to be on. My favorite formation for this is north right clamp. So north right, again, similar to south right. In south, the X was on and the F was off and outside. Now the X is on still, but the F is off and inside. And this is going to create a 2x2 condensed formation on the weak side. And then clamp, that tag is going to bring the Z in tight. And if the Y is on, it's going to bring him off. Now, in my variation of the offense, again, you can check out on CoachTube. If we're in 11 personnel or zebra personnel, the Y is automatically off. So clamp would then just bring the Z in. But even if we're in regular personnel or 21 personnel, this clamp tag is going to bring the Z in and bring the Y off the ball so we can get this snug formation. Now, one of the things that I really love about the Shanahan-McVay offense is you can get to the same formational look from the defense, but change who is where without just saying, okay, here, I want you to go to X this play, or I want you to go to Y this play. And this is a really good example of it here with east-right snug. Now, flipping back and forth between east-right snug and north-right clamp that we just showed, you can see the players are still in the exact same places, but the personnel in each place is different. So east-right is going to be similar to west-right, where our F is on the strong side, but now he's going to be off and inside, and the Y is going to be on and outside. Traditionally, again, this is similar to west, a 3x1 formation where the Z is detached outside, but snug tells the Z and the X to create a condensed stack on the weak side. So again, we've got north-right clamp. This is a really good formation, I think, for having an F as a fullback, and we get a blocking presence with our fullback and our tight end on both sides of the formation. Then if you notice that defenses are playing it the same way, you can get both blocking bodies on the same side using the east-right snug formation. We can get a 4-man surface on the strong side with 4 blocking bodies between a fullback and a tight end, and both receivers backside either cutting off pursuit, or maybe you can run a little RPO backside with them. Now moving into bunches, I've already done a video on what you can do out of a tight bunch formation. I'll link up above. Make sure to check that out. But with a bunch, we're talking about having 3 condensed eligibles on the strong side. We'll talk about clusters on the weak side after these. But bunch right nasty, this is the first formation we're going to talk about. There are, again, different ways to move the Y, the F, and the Z all around on the strong side, and bunch is the first one. What bunch is going to do, it's going to have the F be the point man, the Z is going to be the number 1, he's going to be off and outside, and the Y is going to be in that Y off tight end position. Now, I like to run a nasty version of these bunches, again, where the X is coming in tight. We saw this kind of with the classy variation earlier, and nasty is just going to bring him into a tighter split. But of the variations of bunches, bunch is actually not my favorite. Now, this is the one that the Rams run the most because their F is Cooper Kupp, who is essentially a tight end in a wide receiver's body. So he will get in there and block just as good as almost any tight end in the league. Now, in high school, our F receiver, if we're in 11 personnel, is probably our speedy guy, our jet sweep guy. If we're in just a regular doubles formation, he's the one in the weak side slot. This is not going to be somebody that we want to be either the point man in a bunch or especially blocking. So I prefer a couple different variations that we'll talk about in a minute. But I do want to make mention that you can also widen these out. So the extend tag is going to take this bunch and move it out wider to a wide receiver position. And then it doesn't actually change for the X. We just don't have nasty called here, so he's out in his regular split as well. Now, another version of tight bunch here is box, and I like this one a lot better for having a fullback at the F because our Y is the point man. Being a tight end, he's used to being on the line. He's used to having a defensive end in his face, so having contact at the snap is not abnormal for him as it is for the F. So if we have a fullback here and a tight end, this is going to be a really, really good formation for bunch side runs out of 12 personnel or 21 personnel. Again, if that F is more of a fullback or tight end body. Then we also have our Z as the number 1. So if I were in 12, 21 personnel, box would be my preferred way to get to a bunch. Bundle would be my preferred way for 11 personnel, again, where this F is our speedy receiver. So I like 11 personnel for bundle better because our Y is still in that Y off position. Our Z is also used to being on the ball, so most high school teams that are going to press the point man right here, he should be used to getting off of a press from being on the line out wide. Then our F, who again is probably a speedy receiver, and we don't want having to make contact at the line of scrimmage. He is off, and he's the number 1. And then one of the things that we talk about in the video that I went over bunch is running some sweep motion, and that comes very well from this wide receiver number 1 spot because we keep our 4-man surface intact. So if I'm running tight bunch from 12 and 21 personnel, where the F is more of a blocker, then I like the box formation. If I'm running it from 11, where my F receiver is more of a speedy guy, more of a true wide receiver, then I like bundle better. So moving into some clusters, these are very similar to bunches, except we're talking about having 3 condensed eligibles on the weak side being away from the tight end. So the first way we can get to that is cluster. So you can see we have our tight end on the right. He is alone. This is a closed formation. We could use an open tag to widen him out, but it would still be a cluster with our 3 receivers on the weak side. And what cluster is going to do, it's going to have our X be the point man, Z is going to be inside, and F is going to be outside of the bunch. This would probably be my favorite way to get to a cluster out of 11 personnel. Again, because our Z is going to be a little more used to contact than a speedy wide receiver at F would. Crowd is going to make our F the point man. Our X is the number 1, and our Z is the number 3, staying in that wing off position. Crack is going to switch our X and our Z, but F is still the point man. Now X is inside and Z is outside. And now we get the slug, which is almost my favorite way to get to a cluster. The only problem here is that personally, I like for the X to just always be on. So even in the cluster backside, I would prefer if the X were the point man. So what I really like about slug is the F is in that off position, that Y off position. So maybe we're in 20 personnel and our Y is a true wide receiver, and we want to go slug open to detach him and make him a single receiver, we still have a blocking body being the first man outside the tackle. But the only thing I don't like about slug is it breaks that rule of the X being on all the time, but we can fix that by going X slug right. So the X tag for formation says that we're going to swap the X and the Z, and it works for any formation. You can go X double right and make the X on the same side as the Y and bring the Z backside with the F, and X slug right does the exact same. So this would be my favorite way to get to a cluster out of 20 personnel or 21 personnel, where that F is a fullback, because we've got our X on. He should be the receiver that's most used to getting a jam, because he's going to be the backside receiver in most of our 3-by-1 formations. He's probably going to be left alone a lot, so it should be nothing new for him getting off of a press here. Our F, again, if he is a fullback, he's the first man outside the tackle, kind of in a Y-off position. We can sift him across the formation and still have our extra blocker backside. And then we have our Z as the outside number 1. All right, so you've stuck around. We're going to talk about getting to empty out of condensed formations. And the way that empty formations work in the Shanahan-McVay offense is, instead of having a variation after the formation direction, we're going to call another formation, and that's going to tell the halfback to line up where the F would in that formation. So here we have north-right bundle. Remember, north tells our X and our F to create a 2-man condensed set on the backside. And then bundle, remember, was our formation to have the Z on, the Y off, and then we had our F as the number 1, and that was a great formation for 11 personnel. This is another great formation if we want to put our halfback out into a bunch. So one of the things that I love about this formation is, if you're willing to run your quarterback, maybe we're in the gun here, the defense has 11 gaps to fill. Count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, you can't really read anybody if we're talking about getting the quarterback in the run game, but even just something as simple as quarterback inside zone. This forces the defense to be 100% gap sound. There can be no overlap. There has to be somebody for every gap, and there's nobody who doesn't have a gap responsibility. Also, we have great quick game passing out of this formation. A great concept out of this would be stick spacing, where we've got our X on the stick, F in the flat. Then we've got our Z and our H setting the hooks, and the Y leaking out into the flat for the spacing concept, and it can be so quick hitting out of this formation. So we've got north-right bundle, and another way we can get to the exact same presentation would be to flip those and go bundle right north. Now we've got our regular bundle with our F taking his place back as the strong side number 1, and then we've put our H in that Y-off position on the weak side. So if you've got a halfback who's a willing blocker, this is a great way to get him leading for the quarterback as well. So maybe you run a north bundle formation earlier in the game and you notice something that they're giving the F that you haven't talked about your halfback about being in this position, and you want to switch it up. You can probably do this, and the defense probably won't change their alignment whatsoever. So there are other ways to get to condensed empty. I just chose these two because they really showcase being able to get to anywhere in 3 words in the Shanahan-McVay system. We've got north-right bundle, bundle right north. We've talked about formations like I-right closer and west-right slot. You can get to almost anywhere in 3 words in the Shanahan-McVay system. I talk about it in my CoachTube course. Be sure to check it out. And if you want to know how to use PowerPoint to make these formations and actually build a playbook, be sure to click on the screen and watch this next video.